crashes, defective products, dangerous drugs, injuries, and abuse. Across the state of Alabama, the attorneys, proudly sponsored by the law firm of Hollis, Wright, are here to serve you. Your tough legal questions answered by our experts with host David Lamb and the attorneys of Hollis, Wright.
Hello and welcome into The Attorneys. Thank you so much for joining us. Glad that you are here with us, and we've got an interesting half hour that we've put together that we believe will be of interest to you and matter to you. And in the real world in which you live, kind of the day-to-day of what it takes, talking some legal matters, but legal matters that matter to you is the goal of this show each and every Sunday night. So the way things work, want to give you some ground rules in case this is your first time with us. A lot more folks, I think, now are at home, hopefully joining us tonight and introducing, kind of finding them their way to us. This is Josh Wright. He is managing partner of Hollis Wright, and he is often one of the lead attorneys in this discussion. Tonight it's just the two of us, though, Josh.
Absolutely. You know, with everything that's happened over the last several months, doing some social distancing shows has become necessary.
Right.
So we decided, you know what, it was time to tape some new shows. I'm real happy we're doing that, and I'm glad to have you back.
Glad to be back.
But we're going to maybe change the format just a little bit. But as far as informational for the viewing audience, if people have questions, we've got lawyers standing by to help.
Yeah. Even with the virus and everything that has happened, life does continue. Life goes on. Good opportunities oftentimes, but sometimes bad things happen. Yeah. So this show kind of deals sometimes with some of the tougher things that happen and how to deal with them.
Well, it's a great point because, you know, today we're talking about automobile accidents and how to navigate your way after an automobile accident. And we're going to be talking about a lot of different issues like, do people have to have liability insurance? What happens if they don't have it and they're supposed to have it? Right. How are accidents happening in today's world in kind of this new COVID world? And so we'll talk about all those things today.
Yeah. Before we jump into that, I was so glad to see you. I jumped ahead. Let me give some ground rules of how folks can join the conversation because we really try to make it easy to do so. You'll notice at the bottom of the screen, all throughout the program, ways you can call, text, email. Would love to hear from you. Also, Josh and the team at Hollis Wright, really neat thing they do. They make attorneys available all during the show. So right now, even as we speak, as we're sitting here, there are actual attorneys standing by to speak with you. So if you want to give them a call, you can text, and you can actually speak with an actual attorney if you choose to do so. So take advantage of that opportunity.
Absolutely. You know, that's one of the things that is not going to change in the format of the show for the foreseeable future, and that is that we have folks available if you call, text, email, Facebook, tweet, whatever. You're going to get a response to your question, whether it's a legal-related question. But let's dive into a little bit of our topic. So, you know, David, things have changed so drastically since March related to people on the road, automobile accidents, and those things. But what's happening, and I'm starting to see it, just based on the sheer number of intakes that we see, is more people are back out on the road that have been off the road for a long period of time. And what that naturally does is it increases the potential hazards associated with automobile accidents. Now, we talk about this a lot. We hope nobody ever has a catastrophic accident. Right. But if they do, we're here for them. And not just that, if they have a nominal accident that there's no significant personal injury, but they want to know how to walk their way through the insurance concept and the kind of the legal ramifications of what you do, we're here to be able to answer those questions too.
You are a young fella, but you have kind of jumped right into this, your legal career. You personally have kind of seen hundreds, if not thousands of car accident, truck accidents, vehicle accident cases. So you have laid your eyes on those cases. You're an absolute expert on this subject matter. So let me ask you, maybe from a jumping off point, what in your experience in these hundreds and hundreds, thousands of cases you've seen, what are the common causes that you've seen of the accidents that we see on the roadways? What are the most common causes?
Yeah, so that answer has changed over the years.
Okay.
Originally, what I would have told you even 10 years ago is driving while being fatigued was a common cause of a lot of accidents.
Would you go back a decade?
I'd go back a decade, because
Okay.
what has changed so drastically in the world, and it's changed and morphed how we handle these cases, is the concept of distracted driving.
Right.
That is not a, hey, I didn't sleep well yesterday and I wasn't paying attention and I just made a silly mistake. Now it is after every accident, especially, and you can tell the telltale signs of being able to determine if somebody was distracted. We're assessing things like downloading black box information from vehicles. I'll give you a good shining example. I had an accident just recently where someone coasted for almost 250 yards, didn't apply their brakes until 0.6 seconds before the accident. Tried to argue they weren't on their cell phone. Well, we knew they were on their cell phone,
right,
because that just doesn't happen.
Yeah.
If you're paying attention and you know there's stopped traffic in front of you, you're going to be able to react quicker than that. So we a lot of times are downloading black box data. We are downloading cellular data and information. You may think just because you delete something off a cell phone after an accident that it's gone. Well, it's not. It's in your database, and that database is going to be there for a long time depending on what your phone is, and you're going to be able to pinpoint whether or not somebody may have been distracted on their phone at the time of an accident. So one of the telltale things that I'm seeing now, and I think our entire firm is seeing, is the concept of distracted driving, where people are not paying attention, they're taking the risk on texting and driving, and ultimately that risk is not going to pay off. It is going to cause an accident. I've got young kids, as you well know, that drive. And that's been a very important thing my wife and I have really had to instill in them, is the concept of it can wait.
Yeah.
It can wait, and there's not an urgency, because the last thing you want is a first generation person having an accident. So it's the first accident they've had, right? But it was distracted, caused a catastrophic injury.
Right.
You can end up with some serious consequences. I'm talking about potential jail time in those circumstances.
This is super interesting. We got about a minute and a half left in this segment before we go to break. But just real quick, how much of a difference has technology made in the way you research accidents? Not only you're talking about cell phones, but even cameras that are now seem to be everywhere.
Yeah, for sure. We have an investigator that goes out to all local businesses in the surrounding area of the accident immediately after accidents and tries to assess whether or not there's video. And you'd be amazed at the amount of time we have video. I know you're talking about not just video, but technology generally.
Yeah.
I already talked about the black boxes and the forensic download of phones and whatnot. That's become significant. In the past, David, the way lawsuits were successful is through witness testimony of what happened. But sometimes you'd have 7 witnesses that also saw the same thing, and you know how this goes.
Right, yeah.
3 people saw it totally different than 4 people, and so you're having to lawyer your way through those inconsistencies, even though you may have an idea of what really happened. In today's world, as a litigator, using forensics allows you to lock down the argument and the story for the client to be able to present that claim. So it's made it a lot easier as a litigator with technology.
Yeah. Somebody's watching always, seems like right now.
I would agree. It's very difficult to go a lot of different places unless you're knowing you're going to be videoed in some sense.
Right. All right. When we come back, we're going to get into the nuts and bolts of this issue. All right. But we're going to step aside, take our first break of the evening. As we do so, we'd love to have you join the conversation. Also, don't forget Hollis Wright all over social media, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, everywhere. Just search the term Hollis Wright and you will find them there. Stay tuned. We are coming right back.
I'm Josh Wright with the law firm of Hollis Wright, a personal injury law firm, and thank you for watching The Attorneys. We hope you, a friend, or a loved one never needs legal counsel for a case. But if you do, the goal of the show is simple: to provide answers and legal counsel when you need it the most. Your call to the show is free and off air. So if you have questions specific to the show or related to other accident or injury topics, call, email, or text us. You can also follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube, or go to hollis-wright.com and click on the Contact Us button. We know your time is valuable, so thank you for spending it with us and watching The Attorneys.
The Attorneys, proudly sponsored by the law firm of Hollis Wright, are here to serve you.
When we started the show 8 years ago, my hope was we would be able to do what we do best, which is to help people answer real-world legal-related issues they have in their life.
People oftentimes are confronting various legal issues and problems in their lives that range across the gamut of legal practice areas. Bankruptcy, criminal law, family law, just to name a few. And to be able to have a 30-minute platform or format to where we can just cover various legal topics once a week, that's obviously the primary focus of the show.
That we would be able to use the resources of the many lawyers we have at this law firm to create a plan that had a lasting impact that also gave back to the community at the same time. And I think we've done just that with the attorneys.
Hello and welcome back into the attorneys. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. Before we get back into our conversation about car accidents and what to do after an accident, a reminder, the attorneys from Hollis Wright standing by live right now to speak with you. If you'd like to take advantage of that opportunity to get some free, confidential, and off-air legal advice, call, text the numbers to know 844-LAW-TALK. 844-LAW-TALK, that number, or 205-324-3600. Here with Josh Wright, managing partner of Hollis Wright, talking about car accidents. The question we've got here, even if I think the accident is my fault, should I tell the police officer that?
Well, so that's a good question. We get this question a lot. It's not a matter of are you hiding something if you think it's your fault. It's that you have to look at the totality of the circumstances, whether you are contributing cause to the accident or not is significant legally.
Right.
If you caused your accident under Alabama law, generally you can be held responsible under a concept called contributory negligence, and you're barred from recovering in the accident unless you can prove certain things. There are certain things you can prove still to get around that. So it is best, a best practice if you will, if you've had an accident, to allow the officer just to do what he does best. The officers are trained on this, right? They don't just show up and say, well, I'm going to write this uniform traffic accident report up. I mean, they are trained on how to do these. They're trained on what questions to ask, what to look for, what to note inside their reports. So allow the officer to do his part. And you don't have a duty and responsibility to claim fault or responsibility with the other party there. That's not to say when the officer gets there and he asks you a question, you shouldn't be forthright and honest. You should be forthright and honest with the officer. But let the officer do his job. You'd be amazed at how many times someone thinks they caused an accident, but the reality is they had the right of way. Some people just don't know. And I had a recent accident of a young child not long ago where there was a funeral. And the child thought that they had done wrong. They had stopped, and they were hit. The reality was it wasn't the child's responsibility and fault. It was actually the person that hit them not paying attention because of the funeral, and they should have been stopped. So there are all sorts of rules of the road that you need to allow the officer to kind of lead, guide, and direct you through, and get involved with a law firm. It's easy and it's free to call. All you got to do is call someone like us, or there are many great firms around the city, and ask them questions. They're not going to charge you for that. They're going to answer your questions and help kind of lead you through it.
Yeah. So regardless, is your advice the same if someone's been in an accident, whether it's your fault or not? Is your basic kind of the standard issue advice, if you're in an accident, what should you do? Does it differ if you think it's your fault or not?
Not really, because you want to be able to gather the information necessary to evaluate the case, to make an ultimate determination based on the totality of the circumstances of who's at fault. So things like taking pictures if you can, making sure officers are called to the scene under each and every circumstance, gathering information from the other individual if there's not an officer there, so you know who their insurance company is, who owns the vehicle. Those types of things are standard regardless of whose fault it is. And even if it is your fault, having the information allows you to speed up the process to protect the other person that may have been involved in the accident.
All right, what if the accident is a minor? Should I still call the police or fill out a police report?
Yeah, whether it is a older individual, a middle-aged person, or a minor, you 100% need to. And, Alabama law, and I kind of opened the show with this, a lot of people don't realize this, David. Alabama law mandates that you have automobile insurance. That means that every minor driving on the road right now at 16 years or older is supposed to have insurance. Amazingly, 20% of Alabamians do not have insurance, meaning they're violating the law. There are penalties for that. And there are ways that lawyers can use the fact that someone did not procure or obtain required insurance to the advantage of the injured victim. And we can get into this later, but uninsured motorists and some other options to fill the gap, if you will. But yes, if a minor's involved in an accident, 100%, you need to call the officer just to be able to document it. And here's one more thing I'd mention. Insurance companies are trusting, especially their own insureds, but insurance companies want to guarantee there's an accident, right? So they need to know through a uniform traffic accident report that there was an accident and it was documented by an objective third party like a police officer. So calling an officer is super important for insurance too.
I've only been in a couple of accidents in my life, but I know I was not in shock. It wasn't that bad. But I know I was not my best self after that.
Sure.
You're startled, even a little dizzy maybe, not really thinking clearly. I would think having an officer who that's their job, there's no telling how many they do that day. They know exactly what they're looking for. Somebody with a cool head to document everything versus having to rely on me, and I'm not even sure if it was my fault or not.
Yeah, well, and think about in these terms. So you kind of got the polars: minor fender bender, where you're probably not all that shooken up, maybe a little bit, versus a catastrophic accident where people aren't even at the accident scene when the officer gets there because they've been taken by EMS, right? So those are two polars. There's a lot of gray area in between.
There is, yeah.
The reality is the officers are trained. They know what they're doing. And they're going to recognize that there are times when people are shook up, startled, etc., and they clearly will be able to document what they need to. And in fact, I have a lot of cases where officers go to the emergency room and try and talk with individuals, and if the injuries are significant enough, maybe someone's in surgery, for example, they may not talk to the person for 2-3 days. So, they will follow up and they'll try and gather as much information as they can. One other thing I want to mention to you is this: just because your police report is written up in such a way that makes it look like it's your fault does not mean you shouldn't have a lawyer look at your case.
Right.
The reality is, and there are great officers out there, but they also make mistakes. There have been plenty of times in depositions where I asked the officer, he says, look, man, I think I got that wrong. And I would correct that now if I could, but I only had the information that I had at the time. And I've been able to go do a full investigation to show the officer, hey, look, I don't think this is exactly how it happened. And you'd be amazed at how reasonable officers are to say, yeah, I could only base it based on what I had. I agree with you. It does look more like this is the most probable cause.
One more question before we head to break. I think I might be hurt, but I'm not sure. Should I call for medical assistance?
Yeah, that's use the reasonableness test. I think the answer is yes. If it was my family member, I'd want to go get checked out. There are things like herniated discs in your back and your neck that may not even develop until your body relaxes over a 2-3 day period. And all of a sudden you've got this nagging pain you never went to the doctor for that you should have gone to the doctor for. So, I think using the reasonableness test, if you think you're injured, you need to get yourself to at least EMS. And then potentially to the doctor to be able to assess whether or not there's something more serious that you weren't aware of.
All right, good stuff. We are making our way through this show on car accidents, what you need to know, what you need to do should you find yourself involved in one. Stay tuned. We've got more with Josh Wright from the law firm of Hollis Wright coming up right after this quick break.
I'm Josh Wright with the law firm of Hollis Wright. As with any industry, it's important in the legal world to hire an attorney that is knowledgeable and has a track record of success. But with so many attorneys out there and so many different types of cases, how does someone decide the right lawyer to hire? In this week's Legal 4-in-1, we're answering the question, what should I consider in hiring an attorney? In-state versus out-of-state, big firm or little firm, recommendations from friends or family, the internet, the phone book, or TV with so many choices and so much information, it can be an overwhelming task trying to make the right decision. To complicate things, choosing a lawyer is an important and sometimes life-affecting decision and should not be taken lightly. So how do you select an attorney? First, do your research. Look the firm up on the internet. Learn about the cases they handle and the results they get. Second, find out what clients are saying about the firm. Many websites provide client testimonials or have a star ranking system. Use those to your advantage. And finally, talk with a lawyer from their office and ask them questions. Questions about the volume of cases they handle. Do they return phone calls? Are you just a number or a client that gets the attention you deserve? Please remember, your call, email, or text to the attorneys is free. All of us at Hollis Wright want to help answer your questions on real issues you face. Remember, a competent lawyer will respond to every question you send in. That's our pledge and promise to you. Thanks for watching The Attorneys right here on WBTM 13.
Welcome back into The Attorneys. Just about 6 minutes remaining in the show. If you want to take advantage of the opportunity to speak with attorneys from Hollis Wright who are standing by live to speak with you, then call, text 844-LAW-TALK or 205-324-3600. For the remainder of the time here, let's talk a little about insurance. Got several questions on that. Do I have to report the accident to my insurance company?
Yes.
That's quick.
How about that? We've had guests that do that before, and you're like, oh, okay, well, let's ask
Hold on, but wait, there's more.
All right, no, so here's the deal. You are contractually bound to report the accident to your insurance company if it is your fault, for sure. If it's not your fault and someone else is taking care of it, you're probably not contractually bound. It is in your best interest to report it, even as a no-fault accident, and here's why. If it's a no-fault accident, it's not going to ping your insurance.
Okay.
It's not going to impact you.
That's the concern, I
Even
think.
if your insurance, let's say the other person didn't have insurance and your insurance company has to pay for it,
right.
They're not going to ping you with insurance premiums given the fact that it is a no-fault accident. So
Right.
I think that the short answer is yes. The long answer is what I just described, which is it's in your best interest no matter what happens to report it to your insurance.
What about speaking to the other driver's insurance company?
Yeah, so it kind of depends. A lot of times they'll come to you before you get to them.
Okay.
You should try and gather, if you're capable at the scene and you're not off at the hospital, you should try and gather insurance information. If you don't, it's not catastrophic. Officer's going to gather that information for you, put it in a police report, and that's why you get to a lawyer, because the lawyer can get you the report a lot quicker than you can probably get it yourself.
Yeah. All right. So do or don't talk to the other insurance company.
It is okay to answer general questions. I see what you're asking
Right.
now. It's okay to answer general questions. I would not give a statement to the other person's insurance unless you have a lawyer on your side. Remember, lawyers don't cost you any money to help represent you unless they recover. So you can have a free counsel to assist you and lead, guide, and direct you through the process of giving a statement.
All right,
I wouldn't do that unless
Yeah.
you have a lawyer.
Yeah. What if the other driver's insurance company wants a copy of my medical records?
Well, that's part of their process of investigation. I would definitely get a lawyer involved at that stage, because the lawyer needs to be able to assemble the medical records, identify the actual injuries, because the insurance company may say, well, this person, this is a pre-existing injury. Well, no, maybe it's not. Maybe this is an exacerbation of a pre-existing condition.
Right.
You need a lawyer on your side to be able to present that to the insurance company to convince them that the value of the case is greater.
So practically, I get that call. It's the insurance company. They say that. Can I say, look, I would like you to speak with my attorney about that?
Absolutely.
Is that?
Or you can say, hey, I would like a couple days to get a lawyer involved, and I'm going to have them contact you. Can I please have your contact information? Nothing wrong with that.
Okay. What if the other driver doesn't have insurance, or my medical bills are much higher than their insurance limits?
Awesome question, and I addressed it when I used the term gap filling earlier in, I think, segment 2. There are circumstances where people aren't doing it the right way and don't have insurance, or they don't have sufficient insurance to cover you. Let's assume someone only has $50,000 worth of insurance, but you got $200,000 worth of medical bills. Your own insurance can sometimes protect you as a gap filler if you have obtained and procured uninsured motorists or underinsured motorists. And without spending too much time on the concept, number one, I highly recommend everybody that has insurance, if you have liability insurance, you should get uninsured motorist coverage. It is the least expensive of all coverages, and it is what I call rainy day coverage. If you, David, are involved in an accident and you have huge medical bills and the person that hits you can't compensate you because they don't have enough insurance, but you have uninsured motorist coverage, your insurance company contractually is going to protect you, and they're going to fill the gap and they're going to help compensate you. Uninsured motorist coverage is, I believe it should be mandatory in Alabama, and you can get it for a very inexpensive amount.
All right, so how do you go about getting it? How does all of that work in terms of UIM coverage?
Great question. So when you go and obtain insurance, you have to be presented the option of uninsured motorist coverage in Alabama. And you can either elect not to take it or you can maintain it on the policy that you get. Mm-hmm. So you have to opt out of uninsured motorist coverage if you don't want it. But again, make sure it's priced, because you'd be amazed at how inexpensive it is to go, for example, to get $250,000 of uninsured motorist coverage. It is a very inexpensive coverage, and boy, does it protect you. The vast majority of drivers on the roads today, David, are driving on $25,000 policies. That doesn't go far when you're talking about replacing your vehicle, fixing your vehicle, and then injuries. It doesn't go very far.
I want to get to a final thought from you, but you speak with a passion about this. Why, after as long as you've been doing this, you still so passionate about this subject matter specifically?
Well, you know, it is one of the most prevalent things in my industry, and I have found over and over that it is one of the scariest things that people ever go through. I have so many of my friends that call me and say, you know, I don't know what to do. Like, I'm getting calls from all over the place, and, you know, this body shop is calling me, or, you know, the tow company's telling me that I owe them $3,000. So it can be a very nerve-wracking thing. It is a very easy way to help people at all levels to walk them through this process. And there are a lot of times we walk them through and say, hey, look, you don't need us to do this. But there are plenty of times when we say you do need someone, because we can take your case and make it worth 4 times what it is.
Yeah. Real quick, 20 seconds or so. Final thought from you for our viewers.
You know, this is the first show that we have done since COVID. And I know, you know, there are times when we're worried about COVID on the news and sometimes when we're not worried about it. I'm happy to be back because I think we need to provide this service to the public. We're going to do as many of these shows as we can moving forward, and I'm just glad to be back.
Glad to be back as well. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Good to see you again.
Got it.
Helpful stuff as always. We also really appreciate you being with us. Hope you found this helpful. We'll look for you next time. Have a great week. We'll see you next time right here on The Attorneys.
Thanks for watching The Attorneys, sponsored by Hollis Wright.